Hi, good evening. This is Geoff Ginter with Real Progressives. It's Wednesday, October 10th, except it's not for me. I'm actually doing this a couple of days early because on the 10th it's a birthday in the family, and I am not doing this then. So I'm doing it now. Before we begin, I want to give a shout out. Jeff Epstein is doing the live stream for me. I recorded it, but he's streaming it live so that I can spend time with my family. Thank you very much, Jeff. Mindy Dunham, who used to be with Real Progressives, still finds the time from time to time to be able to help me out with the graphics needs that I have, and I'm so appreciative of that. Thank you so much, Mindy. Just wanted to give a shout out to you too. Love you guys very much. Thank you. But before we get into the meat of it, I just want to mention this right off the top. Drug makers play the patent game to lock in prices, block competitors. As anyone who's ever seen my shows before, you know I've done shows about the FDA. You know I've got an opinion about what it means to get medications passed on the FDA. The bar is set so low, a mouse can step over it. Not a problem. So let's talk about that. We'll do that in just a minute. Okay, so the FDA, like I said, I've done a show about this before. The FDA is really not an independent body anymore. It's really been bought and paid for by the pharmaceutical companies. I mean, for God's sakes, if you're allowing medications that are going to be put into our bodies that we will be ingesting, you've got to care about what it's doing. You've got to care about its effectiveness. And when the bar is set so low for passing a medication that the only thing that a pharmaceutical manufacturer has to be able to do to prove that it should be approved by the FDA is to make sure that it's better than a placebo, which means that it's technically better than doing nothing. How much better? Doesn't have to be much better. Just simply has to be better than doing nothing. And then they'll pass it. You don't have to say that it's better than any of the other medications that are already on the market, that have been around for a long time. We don't have to prove that it's better than that. You just simply have to be able to make something new, prove that it's better than doing nothing. They will approve it. They don't care how expensive it is. They don't care that it's better than what we already have, but you are free to go. And if your patent runs out, you are free to repackage that shit. You are free to keep the medication the same, but give it a new coating. Literally, just a new coating. As long as you can put a new patent on it, a different aspect of it, new patent, you'll be able to extend the patent of the actual medication so that you can't actually get any competition. Just drives me out of my mind. From Forbes magazine, are 90% of FDA drugs approved in the last 30 years more effective than existing drugs? What an interesting question. So let's find out. A forthcoming article for the special issue of the Journal of Law, Medicine, and Ethics, edited by Mark Rodwin and supported by the Edmund J. Presents evidence that about 90% of all new drugs approved by the FDA over the past 30 years are little or no more effective for patients than existing drugs. All of them may be better than indirect measures or placebos, but most are no better for patients than previous drugs approved as better against these measures. How wonderful. So again, when I talk about, the federal government, when I talk about MMT, when I talk about the limits of federal spending, that we are not financially constrained, we are resource constrained. So all the bullshit, that all these pharmaceutical companies that give money to the FDA, and it was written into law in the early 90s that the FDA needed this money so that they could hire more people and approve more drugs quicker, like they were doing in Europe. It's bullshit. It's bullshit, but it is still going to be contingent on we, the people, must rise up. Will MMT save us? No. You will. I will. Everyone will. When we decide to do so. If it's not happening yet, it's because we haven't decided. We haven't decided that we're going to get up and we're going to do something, and we're going to do it as one. So if we want to change the FDA, we have to be able to send the right people to Congress. We don't send people to Congress. We go with them to Congress. They're the ones that pass the vote, but we are the engine of change behind each individual member of Congress. You've got to do it. You can't wait for someone else to do it for you. They don't want to. They're not going to. And if you're not involved, they're going to be taken over by someone who wants something else, who wants something different. Congress makes the difference. And who is Congress? We are, if we decide to do so. So if we want to get good medications, if we want to be able to bring costs down, if we want to be able to stop immoral behavior, Congress is the only one that can do that, and you and I are in charge of Congress. Congress is sitting down on the job, they're in bed with other people, and so are we. Until we wake up to our power, to our responsibilities, Congress isn't going to change. So we got to do our job. But as you noticed in the promo, there's a couple of things I really want to talk about. And the first one, because it's pretty relevant to what we're going through right now, we now have Brett. Lovely Brett. What a wonderful name. Brett Kavanaugh. He is now sitting on the Supreme Court. He's in a robe, and he's going to be making some decisions that are very likely going to be horrendous to life on the planet, and God have mercy on your soul if you're a woman or a person of color or poor. And if you're all three of those things combined, holy shit. He's not your guy. So, but here's the thing. A lot of people in this country think that the Supreme Court is the final arbiter of everything. Congress shall write the laws and the president shall sign them or veto them. And if anyone has a problem with those laws, they will challenge it in court and go all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court would be the final arbiter. Except it doesn't necessarily work that way. Article 3, Section 2. Article 3, Section 2. I'm going to let Tom Kavanaugh, Tom Kavanaugh, I'm going to let Tom Hartman explain this. Take it away, Tom.
What the Constitution says is that Congress can control the Supreme Court. And it doesn't just mean the number of people on the court, because Congress has changed the number of people on the court a number of times since the Washington administration. And it doesn't just mean that Congress can say you're going to be in this building or that building, because Congress has done that too. But literally, Congress can regulate pretty much every aspect of the Supreme Court's functions. And here's what it says. This is Article 3, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution. First of all, in Section 1, it goes through all the areas where the Supreme Court has what's called primary authority, or primary. What's the word I'm looking for here, Shano? Power, judicial power. Yeah, here it is. Section 2, the judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity, original jurisdiction. Thank you, Shano. Arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, treaties made, it'll affect ambassadors, admiralty law, maritime law, controversies to which the United States is a party, controversies between two or more states, all this kind of, these were all cases that the Supreme Court could just take the case and rule on it, and their rule is law, right? And then they get to the second part. in all other cases, in other words, if it doesn't have to do with admiralty law, or it doesn't have to do with a whizzing war between Texas and Oklahoma, or if it doesn't have to do with something like that, an ambassador, the stuff that was listed before. In all other cases, which is 99% of what the Supreme Court does, before mentioned, in all the other cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction. In other words, they're the final appeals court. Buck has to stop somewhere, right? Shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and to fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress shall make. Not might make or may make, but shall make. So it was clearly the intention of the founders and the framers of the Constitution, that Congress would regulate the Supreme Court. Now,
so here it is. In all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, and those in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. In all other cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction. And as Tom mentions correctly, that is easily 95 to 99% of everything that the Supreme Court does, both as to law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress shall make. So this is a whole new ballgame. So most people think that the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land, which it is, and it will have the final arbiter on everything that comes before it, which, if it is allowed to, yes, it will. But just like Congress, it's only effective when used properly. Congress shall have authority and jurisdiction over the Supreme Court. They're all supposed to be checking and balancing each other. The Supreme Court, the Congress, the executive branch. They're all supposed to check one another. And if you notice, if you just search back in your memory, at the very least, throughout the last several years, every time they are putting a Supreme Court member on the bench, it's a lifetime appointment. Oh my God, the sky is falling down. It's a lifetime appointment. And that is so serious. It will change the court for a generation. And if there was nothing you could do about it, then sure. But we do have two things we can do about it. One, of course, is impeachment, which, of course, Nancy Pelosi has said she won't even consider. But then again, Nancy Pelosi is someone who we should consider to be putting into a home. I think she's done. I think she's completely done. There's no use for her at all in the halls of power. But impeachment is an opportunity. But so is Art.3, Section 2. We could write a law that says that Citizens United is no longer the law of the land, that you cannot be a person and a corporation. You must be an individual with a soul, to be able to be a person, which I guess is going to, eliminate all neoliberals, whatever. But you cannot be a corporation and be considered a person. That you cannot simply spend money and call that speech, because if you have $1 billion and you want to be able to come up with ads, then you have more speech than I do. You cannot have more speech that says if you call your congressman, they will actually pick up the goddamn phone, whereas I call my congressman and I get an attendant who doesn't know anything and I never hear back from my congressman. Free speech must also include equitable speech. So we can write a law in Congress, the president signs it, but then someone says, well, that's not constitutional, and they'll take it all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, now being very conservative, having been gerrymandered that way gerrymandered for the Supreme Court, having been rigged to be that way, they will absolutely find, that a corporation, of course, is a person, because we love corporations. Of course they're a person. I don't care if it tramples on your rights. We can't do anything about their rights. So That law is unconstitutional. But when we write the law, we can invoke Article 3, Section 2. And we shall say that the Supreme Court shall have no jurisdiction. They shall not hear this case. Because we, the people, have decided that this is the way it's supposed to be. And you guys have fucked up the Supreme Court. Holding a seat open for an entire year so that you can shove one down our throats and then another one, regardless of whatever is found to be making them ineligible. I don't care what you think about, his sexual conduct. I mean, I have an opinion. I think it's horrendous. I think it's terrible. I would love to have a real FBI investigation. I'd love to find out what is true and what is not. And I'd like to have that appointment held up until we actually do find out. Because the truth of the matter would hold huge weight to whether or not this person should even be on the bench deciding cases, about what constitutes sexual assault, about Roe v. Wade. These are incredibly important character decisions we have to make. But just from the testimony that he was given, do you actually think he had the temperament to be on the bench? Not a chance in hell. I don't want Judge Judy on the Supreme Court. I want someone who actually can do more than simply spell jurisprudence, who can actually embody what that might actually mean. And that is not Brett Kavanaugh. So by any metric, whether you think he was fit for the court or not based upon his temperament, or whether you think he was fit for the court or not based upon the possibility of his past sexual abuses. And we're definitely calling it abuse. I'm not calling it an indiscretion. So we can go around him. We can either impeach or we can do Article 2, Section 3. For those things that we don't want to go to the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court has been compromised. It has been compromised. There's no other way to look at it. The Senate is compromised, the House is compromised, and now the Supreme Court is compromised. So we can't take back the Supreme Court, but we can take back the House. We can take back the Senate. We can take back Congress. Are you willing to do it? Are you ready to do it? It's going to take sacrifice. It's going to take organization. Pardon me. It's going to take cough medicine. Just kidding. No, it's going to take organization. You're going to have to decide that it's more important to get this done than it is to do some things in your personal life. And that means any blue just won't do. I'm sorry. If that's what you're fighting for, whether you think you are or not, you are fighting against this concept. You are fighting against the idea that we are going to get a Congress who will fight for us. Because it is abundantly clear that any blue will not do. So part of your fight, part of your sacrifice has to be able to seek true progressive candidates. Candidates that care about you, about me, about everyone in this country, who care about the direction of the country, who will fight for the direction of this country, who will not take any money from corporations. You've got to fight. And if you can't do that, I don't know what to tell you. I spent 47 years trying to do anything other than what I'm talking about right now. I am as guilty as anyone, more so. But my past does not equal my future unless I say it does. And I say, no, it does not. I will fight. And I need you to fight as well. Don't fight with me. Don't fight alongside me. Just fight. Fight like your life depends on it. And I say that because I don't want you to look to me as a leader. I want you to rise up. I don't want you to hear me telling you what to do, in terms of who to vote for. I'm not doing that. You vote for who you want. You vote for who you think is going to get the job done. I do have an opinion. If you're voting blue, no matter who, I don't think you're going to get the results that you're looking for. I think you're barking up the wrong tree. But I'm not going to tell you not to do it. If that's what's in your heart, God love you and so do I. I think you're wrong. But what can we do? But if we get the right people into Congress, the Supreme Court becomes less of an issue. Now, I've already had this conversation with people, and none of them disagree. Some of them will say, well, Geoff, that's really dangerous. You know, what you're suggesting is that for every piece of legislation that we pass, we can just simply say, fuck you, Supreme Court. We don't want to be able to have your opinion on whatever it is we're doing. You know, we can write a bill that says we're going to put everyone into internment camps and the Supreme Court has no jurisdiction. Yes. Everything has consequences. What I am saying is that what we have been doing for the last 47 years has had consequences. And here we are, living those consequences. And it's horrible, and it's heinous, and there are people suffering, and there are people dying. And it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before it's my turn, before it's my family's turn, before it's your turn. Are you going to wait until you're on that chopping block before you actually do something? Now, given the state of where things are right now, the state of insanity, we're going to need to take some drastic steps. Article 3, Section 2 is a drastic step to take. There's no doubt about that. And if we were in an even playing field, if the Supreme Court were balanced, if the seats had not been stolen, then fair enough. You know, we should not use Article 3, Section 2. In fact, you go through American history, you will not find Article 3, Section 2 invoked. And for good reason. But unfortunately, these are not normal times, which is why you got to send the right people, and which is why every time I talk about MMT, is it going to save us? No, we are going to save us, and that is the long, hard work. Not just simply getting individual pieces of legislation passed, but sticking around after the fact to make sure that it's funded, and then sticking around, making sure that another Congress doesn't come and take it away. Now, why do I talk about taking it away? The NHS in England, conceived under the gold standard in the 1940s, guaranteeing that all citizens will have free health care. Free under the gold standard. They use their taxes to pay for it, to be sure. But once they went off the gold standard, that's not how it works anymore. And what's happening right now? That which used to be a right, that which was considered sacrosanct. You shall not take away the NHS. You shall not break it up and sell it off to the highest bidder. Well, that's what's happening right now. People are not paying attention. People are not engaged. And there are corporations in England salivating, waiting for the very moment when they can pounce, when they can strike. Because here's an entire industry that the federal government of England has taken the entirety of the responsibility for making sure that it gets done. And they don't need a revenue. They don't need profit. So they operate it, and they operate it well. But now people are not paying attention. And because people aren't paying attention, here come the corporations. We're not doing the talking. They're doing the talking. They whisper in the ears of the people that go to the House of Commons, what we would call Congress. And they whisper sweet nothings into their ear. And maybe it starts slow, but eventually it builds up. Before you know it, you're actually signing papers that would actually start to sell off the NHS so that all these corporations can swoop in, take over, and start making billions and billions and billions of pounds. Make a true American healthcare system right there in the good old United Kingdom. And people are going to die. Right now, it's just simply being defunded. It's being defunded, the money choked away from it needlessly. It's not their tax dollars. It's just the federal government of England choosing not to pay what is necessary to keep the quality of care where it needs to be. And what happens if you don't pay? Quality goes down. Wait times go up. Things have to get shorted. And then there's the corporations, whispering into the ear of the politicians, say, see, we told you it wouldn't work. Socialized medicine. You people are so inefficient. You got to let us take over. Only we can do the job. We are private business. Only we can do this. And if the people of England don't wake up, that's exactly what's going to happen. So when I was at the conference, the Second International MMT Conference last weekend, well, not this last one, but the one before, I spoke with a lady, and she lives in England. Wonderful lady. And she had this to say about what it's like to live in England. As horrible as it is right now in terms of the fact that they're breaking it up, they're selling it off, they're beginning the process of privatizing it. It's still a right in England. It's still a right. Listen to what she has to say.
You see, for example, in old age, how what a conundrum it is for families to be able to care for their elderly, their relatives, and at the same time have that layer of concern for income and how much you spend. And what they end up doing is they end up measuring, at what point does it is not worth it to spend more money on your elderly relative. And I think that's a horrific choice to have to make. And in the UK, when it comes to taking care of your elderly relatives, the only question should be, what is best for them? That's how it should be for all citizens. And it's something that when I moved to the UK, I appreciated quite a lot. And you don't have, everybody has economic concerns, but not having that concern of knowing that, if you were to fall ill, or get cancer, God forbid, or, something that is, that in countries with no insurance, these are expensive things to treat. Knowing that you don't have to worry about that is a huge relief. And gives people a hell of a lot of economic freedom. And I think it also goes a great deal to sort out some equality issues as well.
So just listen to what she said. I mean, the peace of mind. If you live in a country where you don't have access to health care, like the United States, 45,000 people are going to die this year because they don't have access to health care. They don't have insurance. And even with insurance, there's no guarantee of quality. There's no guarantee that you're going to have everything covered. There's no guarantee that you're going to be able to keep your house after you get sick. But she's talking about living in a country that isn't even as advanced as this, where people have to make decisions. Literally have to make decisions about whether or not it's economically feasible to keep pouring more money into the care of their elderly. I mean, that's insane. When people complain in this country that if we have single-payer health care, there will be death panels, government-run death panels. Well, in other countries that don't even have something as civilized as what we're discussing here for the ACA, they do have death panels. And it's called your children. Your children are deciding whether or not it's financially feasible to be able to continue your chemo payments. It's insane. So there she is in England, as someone would be in Japan, as someone would be in Australia, as someone would be in Canada. You don't have to worry about whether or not it's affordable. No one has to have that kind of pressure, that kind of thought process going in their head while I'm sick, possibly while I'm even dying? Am I also impoverishing my family? My pain and suffering may be over soon, but my children, my spouse, my family, not only are they going to have to deal with the loss of, hopefully, a loved one, but they may also have to deal with the loss of the home. That doesn't happen in other countries that have single-payer health care, that have some kind of nationalized health system, or at least, something similar. Happens in poor countries all the time. And it happens here all the time. So I want to put this on, and my apologies for the sound quality. I could not find anything better than this. But then I thought about, given the nature of the source, the person we're about to hear, I think the audio quality is pretty appropriate. You tell me.
One of the great debates of our time is about how much of your money should be spent by the state and how much you should keep to spend on your family. Let us never forget this fundamental truth. The state has no source of money other than the money people earn themselves. If the state wishes to spend more, it can do so only by borrowing your savings or by taxing you more. And it's no good thinking that someone else will pay. That someone else is you. There is no such thing as public money. There is only taxpayers' money.
And I love how they just applaud. Oh, yeah, there's only taxpayer money. We're going to make it rain in here. Because they knew they were going to start making billions of dollars. Or in their case, pounds. Because if the federal government has no means unto itself to be able to create money, and it has to be you, the taxpayer, that pays for everything, well, then the private corporations just swoop in. And they just start taking and taking and taking and taking and taking. First, they'll make sure that the unions go. Then they'll make sure that your wages don't increase. But then they'll start getting you to start using credit cards. They'll start making little advertisements to make sure that you're sitting on your own bank. It's called your it's called your home. Just do another mortgage. Just take a loan and use your house as collateral. You loved paying for it the first time. You're going to love paying for it for the second time. But you'll be able to take a vacation. You'll be able to do some things. But the point is that you're going to be in debt. You're going to be in debt up to your eyeballs. The wealth that you were supposed to have got taken from you. Because instead of having that wealth, you had to borrow against it and then pay back the interest. They made billions of dollars off of you. Instead of you having a nest egg, they took it. They loved hearing Thatcher's speech. They absolutely loved it. They loved having gone off the gold standard and being the only ones in the room that knew that that's what happened and what the ramifications of that were. They loved it. That was dollar signs to them. And it took them a long time to do it, but now they're going for the NHS. Just as we are all trying to get to a more England-style healthcare system, they're busy trying to take that system and turn it into an American style. Well, those in the UK that have heard my voice, wake up. What we have here sucks. Yes, we have a lot of, R&D. There's a lot of things. If you got a heart attack, this is the place to be. If If you've got cancer, this is the place to be, because the treatments are bar none for those who can pay. And that is the problem, for those who can pay. For those that have just regular insurance, good luck. We'll see what we can do. I don't know. Tell you what, we'll take care of your cancer, but you're gonna have to hand over the keys to your home. Yeah, don't thank me now. Don't thank me now. I know. You know, it's a wonderful box. You'll be able. I got one out there in the back. I just got my refrigerator delivered, and you'll be able to stay in the box. I got your home. Don't worry about it. But no more cancer for you till it comes back. But there's your box right there. I've lived in Jersey for almost 10 years. I feel entitled to be able to do that. For anyone who was offended, I'm really sorry. But that's what it's like. That's what it's like. If you get sick and you're rich, fair enough. If you get sick and you got really good insurance, you're still screwed. It's just a question of degrees. I mean, think about it. I've got great insurance. I get sick. My insurance is going to cover things, and let's say I have, no lifetime caps. Fantastic. But I'm sick, and I'm sick for a long time, and eventually I lose my job because of that. There goes my health coverage. Whoops. You have any idea how many ways they can screw you? And it starts with a fundamental understanding that they don't care about you at all. They just don't care about you. You're an ATM machine to them. And if you want that to be different, there's only one way to go. And that means you've got to get involved. You've got to rise up, and you've got to send people to Congress that are going to end this. People who understand federal finance. People who will be able to understand what Stephanie Kelton is trying to talk about here.
If I'm here today to tell you that when it comes to the British government, money is no object, imagine the space that opens up. When Mariana talks about not taking a fixed allocation of pounds and saying, this is your budget, go see what you can do with it. If instead you were told, what is it you would like to do? What kind of an economy would you like to build, right? What are the missions you're trying to achieve in the economy? What is the budget you need to carry out those missions? And you could fit the budget to those goals. What would that look like? Could we even do that? Is that even realistic? I think it's fair to say that both here and in the US and across Europe and mostly around the world, we do it the other way around, right?
So what she's getting at is there's an order of operations. And I keep on the mic. And I mentioned this before, and I'm going to do it again because it's so critically important. There was an order of operations. And people will say that the order of operations is that we have to tax, we have to decide how much money we need and tax and get it, and then we can spend it. But that's not the way it works. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution says that the U.S. creates its own currency. There's no getting around that. There's no getting around that. That is a galactic object in front of you that you cannot get around. Article 1, Section 8. We create the currency. Thank you very much. Ding. Good morning. So if we create the currency and we don't promise to exchange that currency for anything, we're not on a gold standard anymore. We don't have a finite amount of a commodity here constraining how much money we can spend into the economy because we have to keep the two equal. And if they're not going to be equal, we have to have more gold than we have paper currency. But we can't have more paper currency than gold if we're on a gold standard. Under those conditions, yes, we'll need taxes, we'll need bond sales, we'll need these things to finance government spending if you're on a gold standard. But if you're not, you don't have those constraints anymore. but you do have constraints. So let's go through the order of operations. It is not tax and spend. That's what Republicans have been calling Democrats for decades. Tax and spend Democrats. They want to tax you and spend it. No. That's not how it works. First order of operations. Make a set of priorities. What do you want to achieve? So don't make a budget. Make a set of priorities. Make congressional priorities. We want to be able to end poverty in 10 years. Want to be able to create single-payer health care. I want to make sure that every person that wants to go to college can go to college. I want to make sure that everyone who wants to have a job can have a job. There'll be one waiting for them. And it isn't going to be make work. It'll be good work. Good for the community. Make your priorities. What do you want to achieve? That's step number one. There's no point going on to step number two if you don't have that one. Next, how do you want to achieve it? Under what conditions? So first things first, are we looking to do this quickly? Let's say, for example, we're talking about green energy. How do you want to go about achieving it? Is it important to get it done quickly, or do we have time to bring it online slowly? Now, that's a whole other video. As far as I'm concerned, we don't have the time. But at least that is a discussion that can be had. Relatively. Again, I don't think we have the time for the discussion, but for the sake of democracy. So the question is, how fast? Do we have time? Do we have wiggle room? What's the urgency? So I have the priority to do it. Now I need to determine, on the order, this is the most important. Got to do it fast. You can take a little more time to do this, and down the line. Next, you must assess your resources. Do you have the stuff to do it? Now, I use this example a lot, because I'm in healthcare. I like single-payer healthcare. So the question is, I want to do single-payer healthcare. I want to make sure that every person in this country gets to go to a doctor when they need a doctor. They need an operation, you get an operation. You need a test, you get a test. Don't need to wait. That's the goal. That's the priority. That's step number one. Step number two, how fast do I want to bring it on? Well, as quickly as I can. Because, step number three, I have to assess my resources. Can I do it at all? Do I have the actual stuff, the concrete, the steel, the brick, the mortar, the human resources in contractors and architects and doctors and nurses and medical technicians? Do I have the pharmaceutical companies ready to dispense the medications? Do I have everything that I would need to be able to absorb all this increased demand? Because if everyone can suddenly go to a doctor, suddenly a lot of people are going to go that would never have gone before. There's going to be a lot of increased demand. Do I have what I need? Do these people have places to go? And do they have doctors to see? The answer might be yes. And the answer might be yes, but everyone's going to be waiting 5 years. So the question is our resources. Do we have the stuff? Now, if we do have the stuff, in good faith, I want to make sure that we have enough doctors so that the doctor can feel like they spend the needed amount of time with each patient. And that no one needs to wait. I'm sick. I can see you or someone today, or at least within a week. Pardon me. I need to get an x-ray. There's an x-ray machine. I need an MRI. I got a place I can go to get an MRI. Do we have these things? And if the answer happens to be yes, then the only thing the federal government has to do, pardon me, gotta do that, is make the payments. So assuming we have everything, we simply make payments. That's it. Congress writes the law. They tell you what they're going to do. They know now how much it's going to cost because they've made that calculation. The president signs it, and now that triggers the Treasury and the Federal Reserve to team up to actually make the payments and get it actually done. But let's say, for the sake of argument, we actually don't have the stuff. As it turns out, I want to do a single payer. I want to do it right now. But if I do it right now, people will be waiting for years. Costs will go up because we'll be competing for the same resources. So costs will go up. I don't want that. So I have to assess what are the blockages. Okay, so let's say I don't have enough clinics. I don't have enough hospitals. Fair enough. The question becomes, can I marshal all the existing resources, all the natural resources and human resources that I have in the country right now? Can I marshal them all to be able to start building that thing? If the answer is yes, we do have that stuff, then we make payments. And the federal government simply makes the payments. And it'll take the time that it takes. Say we need the hospitals. I'm sorry, I just don't have enough hospitals, don't have enough clinics, don't have enough places for people to go. So I got to build those things. And it's going to take 5 years. Just 5 years. And in 5 years, everything, will be open for business and everyone will be able to go. So fine, now I got the places. No, maybe I don't have the doctors. I don't have enough doctors. So now I got to actually start educating doctors. Or maybe I can import them, have doctors come in from other countries. So with a combination of increased education, incentives to get doctors to go to school, we'll pay for your education. With a combination of that and enticing doctors from other countries to come practice in the United States, with a combination of the two, 5 to 10 years. I can get all the facilities up and running in 5, but 5 to 10 to get the staff up. So what we're saying here is that basically in 10 years, we can have single-payer healthcare. And we can constantly expand and expand and expand how many people get to have single-payer healthcare from now until then. But by the end of 10 years, everyone is now covered. There is no one in the country that isn't covered. We have the resources, and we did it responsibly. We did not have inflation. We did it. But let's say, for example, that, it's still not good enough. As it turns out, we don't have the raw material in this country. But the answer, we're not done yet. We're not done. Because the resources should exist somewhere. If we don't have them in the United States, we must have them somewhere. Someone must have the excess steel that we don't have. So we'll find that and we'll buy it. Hopefully for a good price. Hopefully we're not being dicks about it, but we'll buy it. We shall marshal our resources. If it's for sale in U.S. dollars, the federal government can purchase it. I don't care if it's being sold in another currency as long as that currency can be exchanged for U.S. dollars on the international exchange markets. Then we can purchase it. It's not a problem. Because the money doesn't matter so much as did we put it to good use? Did we make investments? Was it inflationary? Were we able to have a productive enough society to absorb all that extra currency being spent? Those are the questions to ask. So as soon as we realize that we need steel and we can find it from somewhere else and we can purchase it and bring it over here and get our stuff done, boom. Then you know what I'm about to do now. Make the needed payments with newly created fiat currency. Only if we truly do not have the resources to get it done. We don't have it domestically. We don't have it internationally. There's no amount of money or time that is going to overcome the lack of existence of real resources. Now we have to make some hard choices. But only after that process. And it never mattered how much it cost. The federal government can always afford to do it. Just has to do it responsibly, has to look to its resources, has to make sure it's not inflationary. But then there's still one final step. You must adjust taxes for income inequality and inflationary pressures. You do not tax as revenue. The federal government doesn't need your stinking dollars. It created those dollars in the first place. Why would it need it back so it could spend more? No, no, no. It needs you to need your tax. It needs you to need their currency. You pay taxes so that the currency has value, because everyone needs it. Everyone has a tax obligation. And even if you don't personally have a tax obligation, you don't have a job, you don't have a home, you're going to want to be able to buy something somewhere, and they have tax obligations, so they need the dollar, so now you need the dollar. Additionally, we will tax to be able to, as number 5 says, adjust for income inequality. The rich are too rich. They're using that money for immoral things. They're trying to purchase our democracy. They're trying to purchase our Congress people. So we got to be able to take some of that money away. We're not taxing success. We're taxing opulence. We're taxing immoral levels of inequality. There's no way you can attain that level of income without screwing people underneath you. So we're going to tax it. We are not de-incentivizing your success. We are de-incentivizing your excess. So taxes can do that. And of course, as I said, for all this spending that we're doing, if it's going to overheat the economy, if the money that we are spending into existence is going to run the risk of outpacing the government, the country's ability to produce goods and services for this money to purchase, then that gets to be an inflationary problem, and we can tax some of that back. You don't have as much money in your pocket, you're not going to be spending it, ergo, we can keep the inflationary pressure down. That's it. This right here, that is the order of operations. Set your priorities. How do you want to achieve it, fast or slow? Assess your resources. Do you have the stuff to do it? If you do, you make the payments. And then you tax afterwards. You balance the economy. You don't balance the books. If you need information about how this works, about how modern money works, about modern monetary theory, new chartalism, whatever you want to call it, there is a number of sites you can go to. Obviously, Real Progressives has a lot of information to be had, but there are people that you really need to start looking into, people that you need to start following. People like Warren Mosler, the father of modern monetary theory. Stephanie Kelton, who you just saw a brief video on. Probably, as far as I'm concerned, the best communicator of modern monetary theory. Randy Ray, Pavlina Chernova, the goddess of the job guarantee. Dr. Bill Mitchell, Stephen Hale, Fidel Kaboub, Scott Fulwiler. These people are amazing. I've met most of them, and they are incredibly intelligent. Ellis Winningham, Mike Norman, Rohan Gray. There are so many others. These people understand the economy. These people understand how money works. They understand what the debt and the deficit is and what it is not. For those that don't know, the deficit is simply the difference between how much the government spends into the economy in a year versus how much they expect to take back. That's it. And if they don't promise to exchange that money for gold, then the size of the deficit isn't nearly as important as where that money went. I'm not upset that the Congress just passed a huge tax cut, that put $1.5 trillion, into the deficit. I don't care about that. I care that almost all of it went to enriching the already incredibly wealthy. It just exacerbated income inequality. Everything we talked about, you're too rich, we have to tax some of that back. They did the exact opposite. They made sure that these rich people got even richer. And by extension, you and I just got poorer. You understand how things work. We still get to be upset over the tax cut plan. We just don't need to be upset because of the size of the deficit. We care where that money went. If we had spent $1.5 trillion forgiving student loan debt, we would all be going, fantastic. That's an excellent use of public money. It's the same hole in the deficit, $1.5 trillion. But one program was good because of where it went, who benefited, how that benefits the economy as a whole, versus $1.5 trillion to the rich who will just hang on to it, buy back stocks, shares of their stocks, make themselves wealthier. But it doesn't trickle down to us in any meaningful way, not on the aggregate. It's fundamentally ridiculous. I'm just letting this thing scroll over and over so you can have time to write these names down. But you understand, when you start looking at the world through the economic lens of modern monetary theory, you understand what is possible. And if the deficit is simply the difference between how much the government spends versus how much it takes back in taxes, then the debt is simply the totality of the money supply, everything the federal government has ever spent, ever, that it has yet to take back in taxes. That includes all the bonds that we've ever sold, including to individuals and corporations and small countries, or just other countries, including China. But all these people already had the money. They had earned that money. China got U.S. dollars not because it printed U.S. dollars. It didn't create U.S. dollars. It earned U.S. dollars through trade with the United States. And it chooses to take some of those U.S. dollars and buy treasuries, because instead of just simply holding on to money and doing nothing with it, it chooses to put into a savings account at the Federal Reserve, buys a treasury security, and it gets interest. It's free money. It's corporate welfare. So the debt is all that money, plus the money in your bank account, plus the money in your wallet. To pay down the debt is to take money out of your pockets. It is nonsensical. It makes no sense. So please, look up these people. Read the papers. It's not that difficult to understand. The hardest thing to understand is to get over this training that you've been indoctrinated into. I don't want my tax dollars going towards whatever it is. I'm afraid of the debt and the deficit. We can't do these things that we find to be so important because it's going to blow a hole in the deficit. You got to understand what the deficit and the debt actually is. You got to understand the ramifications of a monetary system that left the gold standard 47 years ago. We could have the things that we need, and we can do it responsibly. We can pay attention to the actual real resources of the planet. Because saving the planet is going to take three things actually, because the first thing is going to have to be hitting me on the back of the head, because I hate it when people say save the planet. The planet's going to be fine. You and I are going to be screwed. But in order to save life on the planet as we know it, it's going to take two things. One, we're going to have to wake up to realize how screwed we are. Even if... Just wake up. We don't have that much time. So first you have to wake up and you have to decide to do something about it. And then it's just going to take money. It's going to take resources of money to be able to find a way to get us out of this. It's going to take human perseverance, human choice. We got ourselves into it. We're the only ones that can get ourselves out of it. And then however much money it's going to take to transform our economy, to transform our infrastructure. And there's going to be a huge barrier. Even if we get that first part, there's going to be a huge barrier to that all-important second part. If people start asking the question, well, I'd love to save civilization. I would. But the deficit and the debt is just too huge. I'm sorry, well, how could we possibly? It's government appropriations, asshole. Federal government creates the currency. Article 1, Section 8. Checkmate. Ding. Anyway, that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight. I love you all very much. I worry about all of you. I worry about my kids. I don't know what we're going to do. But the more we fight, the more we fight the oligarchs, the less we fight each other, the better off we're going to be. We're going to have to be able to wrest the hands from the levers of power. That's going to be up to us. That's going to be hard. So what do you want to do? Anyway, that's my show. Hit me up with any questions that you have, anything you want me to discuss in future shows. I love you all very much. I will be back next week, live this time. And you guys take care of each other. Bye-bye. Hi, thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting Real Progressives. If you like what we're doing, please like and subscribe to our various channels. If you want to help us in our fight against neoliberalism and to help create a real deal for the people of the United States, then drop us a line. Find out how you can fit in. Or be a monthly patron. No matter what you do, please get involved. Catch you next time.